Yeah, look. Me being the chosen one was like a blessing in deception. City known for homicide, majority depression. Grinding in the gym so I could live through the recession. Real goons show me love cause they could feel how I'm connected. Background of a street dude, mind of a scholar. Just to pop our collar, man, we climbing for the dollar. I mean it when I say it, bro, we started from the bottom. Childhood friends dropping like leaves in this autumn. Don't believe time is money. Money is time. When you focus, man, you look up and your money is fine. I'm from a city where your friend will put a gun in your mind. Cause you eatin' and they envy all that glory and shine. I swear to God, it gets realer. A city full of killers, addicts walking around looking like the zombies off a Thriller. It's sick and getting iller. That's why my skin thicker. Now you see why brothers wanna get away. Grab a Snicker. My mission took me to college where I picked up the knowledge and tried to stay away from violence inside. Escape the virus, divided my folks from tyrants. But I rise from that environment in my life. It was perfect timing. And my drive blew me up atomic. Sick of these suckers all in my bubble though. Critiquing me on stuff I had to struggle for. This dream done been a long time coming, and my clock was Forrest Gump. It spent a long time running. Jungle.
Oh, wow!
Man. Damn, okay.
How y'all doing? It's been a long time. Thank you so much, by the way, for getting us over 6,000 subscribers. I went to sleep last night. I was like, am I going to wake up to 6,000 subscribers? You got us over 6,000 subscribers. Very much appreciate it. There are some news articles to break down. This has been a crazy day in free agency. News article number one, Damian Lillard officially has demanded a trade. Yikes. The timing could not be worse for the Portland Trailblazers, who just signed Jerami Grant to an extreme contract that he is not deserving of, with the assumption that Damian Lillard would be back. Sometimes you create a perfect storm for the perfect situation, for the perfect team to exploit it. News article of the day number two that technically pertains to the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors have signed Jalen McDaniels using their biannual exception, and he will be here for 2 years. I personally really like this deal. I'm going to let you know how I think this deal sets up what I think could be a very competitive, realistic offer for Damian Lillard. And if you'll indulge, I'll let you know why I think Damian Lillard could really catapult this team into serious contention next year. All right, so first of all, let's break down Jalen McDaniels. Who have the Raptors gotten? I Googled Jalen McDaniels advanced stats, and ironically, just like, you know, being the ugly stepchild, I got Jaden McDaniels, his brother from the Minnesota Timberwolves, got his analytics, and then had the embarrassing task of having to remove the tweet where I accidentally tweeted Jaden McDaniels stats. But look, Jalen McDaniels is a really good player. All right. He's not his brother. Fine. But he has a lot of strengths. Comparatively speaking, he has a lot of strengths. This is a long defender. He is 25 years old. He is a spot up wing. And honestly, he took a ton of threes. Like, relatively speaking, his 3-point attempt rate is really decent. I mean, this is not a non-shooter that you're bringing on. 38% nearly 3-point attempt rate is a really good shot diet. As a defender, man, he's disruptive. He's long. He's got like some switchability to him. He'll remind you a little bit of Chris Boucher sometimes defensively, but he's a little bit more mobile on the perimeter. I really like him. I think this is one of those underrated guys where if you give him a chance, he can pop. I mean, if you were crying bullets over, losing Yuta Watanabe, O'Shea Brissett, no offense to either of those guys. If I had to pick, I think Jalen McDaniels is a better prospect than both those guys. And if you're going to swing for upside, I really believe in swinging for guys who have shown you that they haven't had a chance yet. You know, I don't like necessarily believing in going for guys like Josh Jackson and Stanley Johnson, guys who are high lottery picks who have just kind of, they've had the opportunity and they've kind of blown it. And it's no disrespect to them. And sometimes those guys do pop later on. But for a guy like Jalen, who was a second round pick and has just sort of had to work his way to claw into the league, I think he's just looking for an opportunity. And I think he fits. I think he fits really well with what the Raptors want to do. Gone are the days where you're bringing in Rondae Hollis-Jefferson and Patrick McCaw and Stanley Johnson, despite the fact that they cannot shoot because they can defend. Well, great. Now you have a guy who's a reasonable to above average defender, number one, and he can shoot. And he's 6'9". And guess what? Y'all may not believe me, but I think Vision 6'9" is back on because a certain dude moved on from the team yesterday. All right. And a little bit of a hilarious side note. just to anyone who hasn't watched the lives and isn't following us on Instagram, there was a graphic that I shared on this channel called the All Brick Team last year, and we thought it was quite hilarious that two players that I genuinely find to be so repulsive to watch, and Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, were on that team. You know, the 3 of the 5 players on that team are now playing for the Houston Rockets. Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet, and my boy, Jabari Smith, who I really like. I really like Jabari Smith a lot. But those 3 had 3 of the 5 worst field goal percentages at the time that graphic was created last year, and they're on the same team. Yo, Jalen Green, damn, yo, this is going to be tough. All right, moving on. Damian Lillard, let's talk about this, okay? First, we got to get him to Toronto. We can talk about the fit after, but first you have to make the deal work. Why does Toronto have a chance here? Break it down for you. Damian Lillard allegedly wants to go to Miami Heat, just like Kawhi Leonard allegedly wanted to go to LA. Okay. But Dame is a hooper. Dame is a gamer. I've actually talked to a person who played with him 5-6 years ago. And all the stories that I heard about Dame back then, and this is a while ago, so maybe he's changed a little bit since then. Humble, approachable, great teammate, elevates, really good person on and off the court, really clean life, hard worker, first guy in the gym, first guy out of the gym. You want a guy to set an example for your young roster. You want a guy to lead. You want a guy because you're a little bit worried that Scotty Barnes can't do a lot of the initiation stuff. This is your guy. This is your guy. Yeah, he's fucking hella overpaid a little bit, but not that much. Take a look at who he is. 100th percentile offensive player. Do you realize there was a time last year where I think like a bad game for him was like 35 points on really good efficiency? The volume of shots this guy took to be 65% true shooting, you are not talking about one of the top 25 players in the league. You're not talking about one of the top 15 players in the league. If you just look at the offense, you're talking about one of the 5 to 7 best players in the league. Okay. I think he's better than Donovan Mitchell. Don't sleep on this. Yeah, he's older than Donovan Mitchell too. Yes. But he's better than Donovan Mitchell. Don't even at me on this one. Don't be stupid about this. Okay. You're talking about one of the premier clutch time performers in NBA history. You're talking about a guy who has languished and toiled away in a small market, no offense to Portland, who has stayed so professional through all of this time, who has extended loyalty, under whom young players have actually developed. It's not a Fred VanVleet situation. Shaedon Sharpe was great last year. A lot of young players have developed. He's proven that he can move off the ball a little bit to accommodate another guard in the backcourt, like Anthony Simons. I watched a lot of Dame last year. Such a smart player. Such a smart player. When he's going right, his team can go right. Problem with Dame, he doesn't defend well. He's a very limited defender. This is not a Fred VanVleet situation where, he's managed to overcome his height and his, he's not that small. He's about 6'2", 6'3", but this is not a good defender. Okay. Fifth percentile. His teams have generally always been bad defensively. He's had some struggles in the playoffs, but he's also had some really big moments in the playoffs. He's proven that he can do this. The parallels to the Kawhi Leonard situation are very, very extreme. Couple key differences. Difference that may swing you to the, maybe this could be bad. Maybe the Raptors shouldn't do this. Maybe the Raptors should just rebuild. He is older. He's 32 years old. He has a lot of miles. He's played more minutes in his career than Jimmy Butler. Fine. He's not a good defender. So unlike Kawhi, where, this was elite two-way impact, he's not quite that level of player, right? He's just a notch below. Not even like there's much of a notch, but I think the defense just sort of swings it down, right? It's not quite Steph Curry. If you look at Steph Curry, honestly, Steph Curry and Dame Lillard offensively, very close. You're splitting hairs, okay? Yes, it is true. I promise you. You get Damian Lillard into Steph Curry's situation offensively, you get him Draymond running pin downs for him and doing short roll shit, and you got Steve Kerr's motion offense. Damian Lillard would be such a different career. But that's not been his path. He's had guys like Yusuf Nurkic. He hasn't had the best coaches. He hasn't had the best teammates. And I know that I'm sort of defining the entire Fred VanVleet narrative, but y'all remember what I said about Fred VanVleet last year? I swear this guy thinks that he's Dame Lillard, and he's not. Well, Dame Lillard is Dame Lillard, and that is a different situation, a very different situation. The complication for Portland has always been roster building around Dame. How do you put together a competitive roster with this guy? He takes up so much money, takes up a lot of touches. He is selfless. He's not a selfish player. You watch him play, he's not selfish. Even when he put up 71 points, there aren't a lot of bad shots in that shot diet. He's just dynamic as hell on offense. So what kind of roster do you want to put around Dame Lillard? Well, ironically, the exact type of roster that the Raptors put around Fred VanVleet last year. Exactly the type of roster. Big playmakers, solid screen setters, elite, versatile wing defenders who can actually switch out to the perimeter, good drop coverage, Jakob Poeltl, Christian Koloko, elite. Oh my God. Now here's something funny. Let's look at it from the other side. Okay, also, I'd be remiss if I did not mention the contract. The contract is, God damn it, it's bad, right? You might say this is bad. Okay, he's got a player option in 26-27. He's definitely picking that up, right? $58 million in 25-26. That's the first year of Scotty's extension, right? You're gonna be a luxury tax team that year. If you take this guy on and you intend to keep him with that contract, you will be a luxury tax team. But can we please put into context this contract? I understand when this is where anchoring bias comes in. When this contract was signed, it was legitimately insane. How can you possibly pay Dame Lillard $66 million? Well, here's a really, really good question for you. Who would you rather pay $50 million next year? LaMelo Ball or Damian Lillard? Because I can tell you, one of these guys single-handedly upgrades your floor by about 15 to 20 wins. And the other guy might move it by 3 to 4 wins. And you're just banking on upside, which is not going to happen. No offense to LaMelo Ball. That's not going to happen. In the grand context of the new NBA, Damian Lillard making this money when Fred VanVleet is making $43 million annually, where Desmond Bane, who is nowhere near the player Damian Lillard is going to make, $200 million over 5 years. That's $40 million. Who would I rather pay? $50 million for Dame or $40 million for Desmond Bane? Age be damned. I'm talking player value asset wins next year. I'll take Dame easily. Now, unlike Steph Curry, who has morphed and evolved into a very good defender, not a very good defender. Let's not get exaggerated here. Steph has become a really decent team defender. He doesn't tank your defense. He's not a bad defender. Dame needs to get up there. Could playing in a winning situation just motivate you a little bit more to play defense? We've seen it before. We have definitely seen it before. And let's not even be crazy here. The Cleveland Cavaliers were really good last year, right? I mean, they had some good defenders around Donovan Mitchell. I don't think that Damian Lillard is as bad a defender as Donovan Mitchell. I think they're really close. There are a lot of teams that have had some serious playoff success with defenders who are worse than Dame, including the Atlanta Hawks with, Trae Young, the Dallas Mavericks with Luka Doncic. Granted, he's slightly better, but not by much. You can flank one bad defender. Okay. So what would the trade look like? Sorry, my nose is itchy and I don't know what's going on, but there's I don't know what's going on. Sorry to keep playing with my face here. So what would the trade look like? My pitch, and some people think I'm absolutely delusional, but I'll walk you through why this is a competitive offer. My pitch would be Pascal Siakam, Thaddeus Young, and Malachi Flynn, and I would take back Dame and fillers. I might add a pick swap in there, but I'm not throwing in 3 first-round picks. I'm not losing my mind. Pascal Siakam's a hell of a player. And look, the Portland Trailblazers and the Toronto Raptors are totally inverted rosters. One team has an abundance at one position. The other team has an abundance at another position. There's so many reasons why these two teams are such ideal trade partners. Look at the Portland Trailblazers roster. Jerami Grant, Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe. These guys have an abundance of shooting, okay? They also have an abundance of guards, right? Specifically with the drafting of Scoot Henderson. What are they really lacking? Interior presence, playmaking from the big spot, wing defense. Well, guess what? We got Pascal Siakam. We got Chris Boucher. We got Precious Achiuwa if you want him. We got a lot of pieces that really help that roster. And what do they have? They have the one thing we don't have. They have a superstar. They have a superstar who wants out, who's highly overpaid, according to some people. I don't think he's overpaid. I think he gives you exactly what you're paying him to do. And he's box office as fuck. Toronto Raptors, you want to hike your ticket prices next year by like 20, 30%. You want to price fans out even more? Trade for Damian Lillard. I promise you, this franchise will love him. He is everything that has been celebrated in Toronto sports. Tough, humble, started from the bottom, all your fucking bullshit. He's undersized too. You can throw that into the Kyle Lowry, thing. He becomes the second greatest player to ever put on a Raptor jersey immediately. No offense to Vince. Immediately. That's box office. Critical difference between trading for him and Kawhi. Yes, Kawhi was a better defender. Yes, Kawhi was younger. Kawhi had an injury history, and Kawhi was on a 1-year contract. This is a dude who's locked for the next 3 years. You have control, and he's professional. He's not going to sit out games. He's not going to tank his value. If you present him with, Dame, give us a chance to sell you on this. I know you wanted to go to Miami, whatever, for whatever reason, but Toronto suits you, bro. This is not a guy who's averse to cold. This is not a guy who's averse to not playing in a major market. Toronto is a much bigger market than Portland. This would be a massive step up. And the love that he would receive from this franchise, oh my God, it would be perfect. Damian Lillard fits Toronto, and Toronto fits Damian Lillard. And I think that trade package is competitive because what's on the table for them right now? In the current CBA, there might be some teams that have not planned accordingly to be able to absorb $65 million in 2026, 2027. And maybe those teams don't have a player of the caliber of Pascal Siakam. Do you ever think about that? How many players in this league are available for trade that are better than Pascal Siakam? Look, y'all got Kawhi Leonard for DeMar DeRozan and Jakob Poeltl. Do you remember why that was? It's a very unique situation. You had all-time great, in my opinion, one of the 75 greatest players of all time who had an injury concern and had basically scared teams off from trading for him if those teams were not in LA. Very unique situation. He had injury concerns, and there was a team in the San Antonio Spurs who wanted to, for whatever reason, remain competitive. They did not want to tank. They did not want to rebuild. They didn't want to give him away for pack. They wanted an all-star back, and that was their undoing. They traded Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green for one young player and one guy who can keep them afloat for the next 2 years for no reason at all. Honestly, no offense to DeMar, no reason at all. That was a unique situation. Most teams in that situation would either be looking for a superstar back of equal value, which they're probably not going to get, like a swap of stars, or they'd be looking for massive contracts and picks. So you luck out. You find a team in the perfectly wrong situation. Now, no offense to Portland. Maybe they're in the right situation. Maybe Anthony Simons just needs a little bit more time. Maybe he needs touches. Maybe he's on the verge of being an all-star. Maybe Pascal Siakam can be a really, really good fit on that roster. I know that roster fits him way better than this team did last year. There's no Scotty Barnes on that roster. There's no Jakob Poeltl on that roster. Everyone's skilled. Everyone can shoot. Everyone's dynamic. It's fast-paced. You play with Scoot Henderson, you're going to get the ball way more than you got the ball with Fred VanVleet. I'll tell you that. Scoot's a better passer than Fred VanVleet. Day one. Really good passer. So you got a perfect roster for both stars. Just flip them. Just flip them. Now, I hear some of you saying like, my God, we saw this last year. Rudy Gobert, Kevin Durant. There's no way you're getting Dame Lillard without giving up like 3 first-round picks. First of all, I don't think the Raptors can give three first-round picks. Someone correct me on that. Please correct. I think because of the 2024 holdup and the extension on that, you have to negotiate with San Antonio to fix your how you're conveying the pick, because the protections extend further. I don't think it's possible to trade a pick that is just stuck in limbo like that. I could be wrong. I believe last I checked, this was the case. So it's not like they can demand the world of you in terms of pick compensation until, next year. So I think that this is a worthwhile deal. I really do. I think this is worth it. So now let's look at what this roster would look like with Damian Lillard and why I think it's so good. Okay, so in this scenario, you lose Thaddeus Young, who you probably should have waived, but you let his contract become fully guaranteed precisely because he's trade fodder. There's no way. I don't think he's coming back next year. He was really a part of that Nick Nurse, Fred VanVleet camp, and I think people know that. You lose Pascal Siakam. That's a tough blow, right? But what have we been complaining about with this roster the entire time? It doesn't fit. Scotty, Pascal, Jakob. As three guys who struggle to shoot. Where the hell is your spacing coming from? Where is your spacing coming from, bro? It's not like Dennis Schroeder is some lights out shooter. Jeff Doughton's not some lights out shooter. You got Otto. Maybe he doesn't even play next year. I don't know what his injury situation is going to be like. Who are your shooters? Joe Wieskamp? Be lucky. Grady Dick, Gary Trent, OG Anunoby. You need more. You need more shooting. In today's modern NBA, you need more shooting. And if you can bank on Scotty becoming like a 32% three-point shooter next year, I think that'd be great. And it will help. But it will not swing the balance, especially when you're facing teams that have 3-4 guys who are hitting at a 37, 38% clip. You cannot win this way, no matter how well you play on defense. We saw it last year. So swap your greatest weakness for your greatest strength. Now, obviously, this channel has been a very, very big propagandist proponent for Scotty running point. And bringing in Damian Lillard takes away point from Scotty Barnes. But I don't think it takes playmaking away from Scotty Barnes. Because you still have one less cook in the oven, right? You're taking out a very inefficient star. Well, not a very inefficient. You're taking out two kind of inefficient stars. And I don't think Pascal's inefficient, but I don't think he's some godly level of beacon of efficiency either. He's efficient-ish. I think he's over 56, 57% true shooting, maximum 58. That's 57. That's not star level. Star level starts at 61 plus. Dame is on some other fucking planet when it comes to efficiency. You take out that. So what does a roster really need to thrive? A roster needs defense. It doesn't matter where your defense comes from, bro. If you have great, like elite wing defense and competent interior defense, you can swing. You can swim. If you have kind of loose perimeter defense, but godly interior defense, you can swim. If you get a lot of your shooting from your perimeter spots and a lot of your paint touch and a lot of your post playmaking from your bigs, that can work. Invert it. What if you get a lot of your post touches and a lot of your post playmaking from a wing spot, like Michael Jordan, Luka Doncic, etc.? Then you get some of your shooting from your bigger players, like Tony Kukoc. Or Kristaps Porzingis, in theory, that could have worked. You just need to fill out certain skill sets, offensively and defensively. That's really how it works. You need a guy who can break down the defense. Correct. You need guys who can relocate, move off the ball. Correct. You need someone who can offensive rebound and get some extra touches. Correct. You need someone who can do some stuff like set screens and roll downhill. You need elite paint finishers. You need movement shooters. These are all playing skill types. It doesn't really matter if your movement shooter is 6'9" or 6'2". It really doesn't. It doesn't matter if your playmaking and comes from the center spot like it does for the Denver Nuggets, or it comes from the point guard spot like it did for the Phoenix Suns. It doesn't matter. As long as you have that skill set in your roster present, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. So in a lot of ways, Damian Lillard is replacing Fred VanVleet, and Scotty Barnes would then be replacing Pascal Siakam. So how does that work? Well, I think it works great. I think it works absolutely great. What does the roster look like? Well, you have Dame, Dennis Schroeder, Jeff Doughton. That's your point guard rotation. You have Grady Dick, Gary Trent Jr. That's your shooting guard rotation. Small forward, Otto, OG, Jalen McDaniels. Power forward, Scotty. Grant, don't look power forward. Playmaking point, like whatever. You call it whatever, right? He's got some elite. He's strong. He can bang down there. He can also play backup point. If you shrink your rotation, he can also be a backup point guard. If Damian Lillard's out, he can start at point. You can start Precious at the 4. Scotty, Precious. Who else you keep? Scotty, Precious. Okay. And then center is Christian Coloco and Jakob Poeltl. You get rid of 3 players, 2 of whom would be potentially rotation players, and 1 of whom would be a definitive starter, right? I don't know. If I understand Thaddeus Young may seem washed to some people, but I think he could still be like a 10-minute a game guy for someone down the line. He sets some great screens. He's a good playmaker. He is a corner shooter. He has been a corner shooter in the past. So Thaddeus Young still provides some value, man. Like he's not a spring chicken anymore. He can't get up like he used to in Philly, but he's a good player. He's not a terrible player. He's older. He's not old. He's older. He's not like Udonis Haslem. Like chill. Recency bias. So you take 3 out for 1. I think it clears up a lot of pecking order issues. I think it clears the way for guys like Precious Achiuwa to have a more clear role. And look at the roster around him. Now, Gary Trent Jr. is not anyone's idea of a great defender. Fine. You're going to fall into some issues with those. But Scotty, OG, and Jakob is exactly the type of front court you need with a guy like Damian Lillard. With Dame, OG still gets more touches, right? You think about it. I mean, you think, okay, OG Anunoby wants more touches. But you know why OG wanted more touches? Like, do you really want to know why OG and Scotty and Gary and all these guys seem to be at times frustrated last year with the touches they were getting? Because of who was ahead of them in the fucking pecking order. Now, I've played basketball. I've never played basketball in the NBA or really competitively. Like, I've never been a pro athlete. But I can imagine if I was, and I walked into a locker room and I was like some aspiring star who was 25 years old, and I really wanted more touches, and they said, Fred VanVleet is going to be like your 28% usage guy. I may not be so happy because I don't actually see the big gap between me and Fred VanVleet. But Damian Lillard is going to be your big shot taker, and occasionally you might set some screens as he goes off for 65. I can live with that. You know why? Because I actually believe I can win with that. Because I see the talent. And you know what? Don't ever underestimate the presence of greatness. Greatness elevates. Greatness creates greatness. Dame could be a really inspirational source for Scotty and OG and Gary. I think he can have a real ripple effect on the youth. I think he can help Grady Dick. And I think with Damian Lillard, Grady Dick, OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., in evolving Scotty Barnes, Jalen McDaniels, Otto Porter, suddenly you go from being one of the worst teams in the NBA at shooting to possibly the best. It could happen. Because you got Dennis Schroeder too. And he's not a bad 3-point shooter, right? It could happen. You got 414 comments. I'm very much looking forward to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a video that I released, and it was about why the Raptors were already building around Kevin Durant. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to respond to questions via text. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the question that I like, and I'm going to respond to it via text as the video is playing, so that way I can really focus on the responses. Cool? Okay, so if you never saw this video, if you were one of those people who didn't see it, just replace the name Kevin Durant with Damian Lillard, and I think all of it still adds up and it all makes sense. It's one of the videos that I'm most proud of. It's about 15 minutes long, so I'm going to take some time to respond to your comments. Let's let the video play.
It's a lot of dribbling, a lot of long twos, and not a lot of motion. The Raptors shoot worse from 3, worse from the field, worse from the line, and have fewer assists than their opponent on a nightly basis. So how is it still working? How is a team that is missing so many bodies, missing Pascal Siakam, still managing to be a top 10 team in the NBA? What is this one mystery stat that is compensating for all of this offensive inefficiency? And how might all of this translate to when the Raptors inevitably make a...
Okay, hang on. I gotta acknowledge this. Whoa. Bro. Oh. My God. Dude, thank you so much. Honestly, thank you so much. You did not need to do that, but thank you so much. I'm going to get right back to the video. I will link it. For y'all. You can definitely, check it out. It's on the channel page. It's on the features page if you want to watch it in a different format. Thank you so much, man. This is one of the best channels on YouTube for basketball. I wouldn't lie. I'll tell you, like, it's on my top 10. and it just started, and they're great. Okay. No channel in the Raptor space has grown faster than Pensari basketball until this channel came around. Okay. We grew faster than anybody last year in terms of growth rate, fastest in the last 4 months. This guy took over, and he's awesome. His video content is amazing. Check out the last video on Fred VanVleet. Check out the one before that on Darko. And if you've been living under a rock, check out his story on Scotty Barnes. I'm not plugging this because he gave me a super chat. Y'all know, it's funny. First time I talked about this channel, I didn't even know what the name of the channel was. I referenced the video when he had 2 subscribers. Now he has over 3,500 subscribers. So to the 462 people here, you're a Raptor fan, definitely check out Goateology. Okay. Now let's get back to this. I'm gonna get back to this. Sorry, I had to pause the video for this. This is like a crazy super chat. Wow. Thank you, man. Thank you so much. Also to the other super chat here. Would you consider Luka Garza at a minimum salary? I would not. Okay, let's get back to this. Sorry, guys.
Long rumored trade for a superstar like Kevin Durant. If you're new around here, my name is Robert. This is Pensari Basketball. Make sure to hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, grab your coffee, and let's get to it. There's an old saying that you should dress for the job you want, not the one you have. Well, the Toronto Raptors are building around a star that they want, not the one that they currently have. The way I see it, there are 3 possible outcomes. Either the star they have takes a monumental step, or that star takes enough of a step that he can be traded for a star that they actually want. Or a budding star that's already on your roster becomes the star that many think that he can become. In either case, what the Raptors are building doesn't actually work without a top 5 player, especially if the goal, as stated, is championships. And for a team that is so strongly rooted in analytical experimentation, it is a stroke of genius to play the way you would if you already had the top 5 player you so covet, as opposed to wasting this time evaluating and developing into one style, only to have to completely gut it a year from now when the faces change. There's another saying that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and that history tends to repeat itself. And the Raptors have done this exact thing before with DeMar DeRozan, where they swapped the star they had for the one they actually wanted. The one that didn't quite develop into the one that was already there.
Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green going north.
DeRozan, and the Spurs want to stay relevant.
I was told he's not too thrilled.
If Toronto can pull something amazing off, get Drake.
Is this the dagger?
Are the 2019 NBA champions?
If you look at the 3 teams in the NBA that lead the league in limiting turnovers, it's the Atlanta Hawks, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Toronto Raptors. And they have one very glaring similarity. They all lean very heavily into
Heliocentrism.
Trae Young, Luka Doncic, Pascal Siakam. In Siakam's absence, you have seen Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, and Fred VanVleet, to varying degrees of success, try and fill into the role of Siakam. The philosophy of
Heliocentrism
is to limit the possibility that the ball could end up either ending in a turnover or end up in the wrong hands for a shot. 55 to 70% of your offense is basically funneling through this player, where this player is either assisting or scoring all of those baskets. This doesn't always look pretty, it doesn't always work, but it does one thing: it limits turnovers. Now let's consider 2 very different offenses, Golden State and Toronto. The Raptors turn the ball over 12.9 times a game. Golden State Warriors turn the ball over 16.9 times a game. Do you see the trade-off? When things are going right in Golden State, they make up for that quite easily with a barrage of 3-pointers at a very high efficiency, being anchored by one of the greatest 3-point shooters of all time. But the Raptors don't have a Steph Curry or a Klay Thompson, so they do have to lean very heavily into becoming card counters at the table. This is basically Moneyball. Yeah, some nights it's going to get hella ugly like the other night in OT, but you can begin to see why a team might want to lean into playing this way. The Raptors are currently 9th in offensive rating and 9th in net rating. So how do they do this? 2 things. They force more turnovers and they commit fewer turnovers. The result is the Raptors have the largest turnover margin in the NBA at -4.5. On a night where the Raptors decidedly win the possession battle, you see extreme examples like the case against Miami, where the Miami Heat took 20 fewer shots than the Raptors. The Miami Heat shot 55% and lost the game. The Raptors are finding creative little angles and ways to game the system against the other team. So now I want to tie all of this together and show you how it relates to Scottie, Luka, Kevin Durant, and Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam this year has been pretty dominant. 1.15 points per possession is really damn good. Luka Doncic has been slightly better at 1.18. Both players dominate heavily in the mid-range, in the post, take a lot of twos. Scottie Barnes, to his credit last year, was at 1.11 points per possession. This year, with a higher volume of threes and with his touch around the rim seemingly evaporating, and a shooting slump and the ankle injury, Scottie Barnes is down to 0.98 points per possession. That's not great. The efficiency of this type of system that the Raptors are building is very much contingent on who is taking those shots. What's the gap between 1.18 points per possession and 1.15 points per possession? I guess it depends on how many possessions, right? But the math is pretty simple. There are more scoring events in an average basketball game than there are in a hockey game, a soccer game, and a football game combined. In the playoffs, when the game slows down, the team with the best player tends to win. The Raptors found this out the hard way, year after year, bumping up against LeBron. LeBron was a significantly more efficient scorer than DeMar DeRozan. The minute the Raptors swapped DeMar DeRozan for a top 5 player like Kawhi Leonard, they won a championship in the first year, because the system that was in place around DeMar basically was tailor-made for a player like Kawhi. You swap the pieces. Sure, the Raptors played a little bit different with Kawhi and Gasol and Danny Green than they did with Jonas Valanciunas and DeMar DeRozan, but in a lot of ways, what they were doing was the same. Putting the ball in Kawhi's hands or DeMar's hands, this is a very big difference over a 7-game series. You might be talking about an extra 20 to 25 points. In games that sometimes come down to 1 or 2 points, 25 points over a 7-game span does change the series.
Fourth-quarter points by Kawhi Leonard.
I mentioned before that Luka Doncic scores 1.18 points per possession, that Siakam scores 1.15 points per possession, and that Barnes this year is all the way down to 0.98 points per possession. But Kevin Durant scores 1.3 points per possession. I don't know if there are any math nerds out there, but fire up your calculators. If you start winning the possession battle, if you create a system which is tailor-made around a player who is going to make so many decisions in the offense, swapping a guy like Pascal Siakam for a guy like Kevin Durant takes your offense from 9th or 10th in the NBA and firmly puts it top 3. That is the gap between 1.15 points per possession and 1.3 points per possession, especially when you start playing it out over an 82-game season or a 7-game series. Durant-Siakam is one part of this equation. But what about the other side of this equation, which is Scottie and Luka? So Luka Doncic is not a great shooter. I know that people think he's a great shooter because he hits a lot of these long bombs, but he's not a great three-point shooter. On his career, he is a 33% three-point shooter. This year, he's shooting 28% from 3. Teams love Luka shooting threes because that means he's not going to go in the post. Scottie Barnes, to his credit, is a 35% shooter this year from 3. So the differences are not nearly as glaring as you might imagine. Luka is a very assertive and very aggressive offensive player. Both are about 6'7" to 6'8" guards. They have elite court vision. I do think that Luka is a way better scorer, way more refined, has a way bigger bag, ton of counters. But the way that they generate mismatches in the post and the way that they create space is actually remarkably similar. What I think makes this comparison most lucid and somewhat coherent is the passing. Even if Luka is ahead of Barnes in almost everything offensively, I do believe that Barnes is willing to work hard to at least bridge the gap a little bit by year 4, which includes working on footwork, working on counters, working in the post, getting more assertive on offense. There are advantages that Scottie enjoys that Luka can't even dream of. He is a bigger athlete, he is a longer athlete, he is a quicker athlete, and the fact that Scottie is also going to eventually become a very positive defender for the Raptors, the matchup between these two could be somewhat comparable in terms of impact. So while I'm not sure that the Raptors are interested in trading Siakam for Kevin Durant, and while I'm not entirely sure that Scottie and Luka are comparable players or that Scottie will ever be able to bridge the tremendous gap that exists between the two players right now, I wanted to make this video largely to lay down my thoughts on why I think I might be wrong about the Raptors offense and why there is at least some logic to how they're playing and why they're playing this way. The Toronto Raptors are once again at the crossroads. A homegrown star who has consistently come up short in the playoffs, on the verge of a contract extension that might backfire, in a conference where he's not one of the top 3 players. A team captain and a best friend who may sour in the event of a trade. An emerging star waiting in the wings that you hold on to at all costs. And a disgruntled top 5 player with a checkered injury history who may offer only a sliver of a contention window. Run it back? Prey on luck? Hope to become one of the few teams in NBA history to win without a top 5 player? Or patiently go through the growing pains and hope that the emerging star in question can take an unprecedented jump in time to line up with the current core? The Raptors could contend for a decade as Kevin Durant gracefully passes the baton to Scottie Barnes. Or it could lead to absolutely nothing but a series of playoff heartbreaks. Anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think about this.
All right. I've started some questions for you. I've got about 12 questions that I would like to answer. Thank you for indulging me. It was a really interesting thing to look back on. Now that Fred VanVleet's gone, it's sort of like one part of that equation is just out the window. And I really do believe that with the level of defense that the Toronto Raptors can play and the amount of versatility that is existent in their front court, and yes, Pascal Siakam is a part of that, but he's by no means one of your 3 best defenders on this team right now. So it's not like you're losing something monumental defensively by getting rid of him. You are, however, losing your best offensive player. And I think that Dame is a massive upgrade on that end. So you're basically going from, let's call it 92nd percentile offense to 100th percentile offense in exchange for giving the Portland Trailblazers a more balanced player who is probably an upgrade from 5th percentile defense to about 67th percentile defense. It is a trade-off, but I can tell you that the jump from a 92nd percentile offensive player to a 100th percentile offensive player is like twice the contract. And the jump from a 5th percentile defensive player to a 67th percentile defensive player does not change that difference. So while we may have an inclination to overhype players who are two-way, the truth is that a player who is good at offense and defense will always be worse than a player who's great at offense and not so great at defense, right? So anyways, offense is just worth more in the NBA. I realize that sometimes when you have an abundance of offense and no defense, you can start to think the defense is worth more. But if you want comparisons, Fred VanVleet, being a two-way guy, he just got paid a ton of money, but look at Duncan Robinson's contract. I mean, he was not one of the best offensive players, but he provided one offensive skill set that was very important. He got $90 million. Draymond Green was arguably a top 3 defender in the league last year, has multiple championships, 4 championships. He's anchored 4 championships. He just got $100 million for 4 years. So in all honesty, offense obviously gets paid more for a good reason. Not only is it much more appealing to fans to watch, but is also far, far more, I think a good offense beats a good defense. So worth stating, worth noting. All right. Logic says Dame trying to contend. Well, he can contend here. He could contend here relative to the roster that he has in Portland. I think this roster offers him a far more supportive structure. I think Jakob Poeltl is a massive upgrade over Yusuf Nurkic. I think Scottie and OG is an upgrade over Jerami Grant and whatever hell else they have there. I think the young players here are just a little bit better. I think the coaching system, and I just think the organization in general. I mean, he's been very patient with Portland. Portland has not built a championship team in the last 25 years. Under Paul Allen, those old quote-unquote jailblazer teams were at least competitive and very, very deep into the tax, and they had very expensive rosters and great depth. And it was generally like the ultimate spend money, I don't give a shit about anything teams. And at least in those cases, you could say, okay, they didn't have a top 5 player, but they had very deep rosters. This Portland team has, apart from Dame and CJ, has never really had a real shot. They've never really put that next to him. And it would suck, really, to watch all the narratives around Dame always be he didn't win a championship. And I think the Raptors can give him one. I think they can build a competitive roster around him. He'd have to give him a year, But once that pick conveys next year, if Scottie emerges the way that you think he's emerging, and OG extends, and Dame is here, and Dame is good, and Dame will be good. He's a shooter. He's a smart player. This stuff translates. His defense has never been good. It's not like it's going to get that much worse. He's bad. He's really bad defensively. It's not like, you're just going to live with that part of it. Okay. Point of attack, you're going to have to hide him maybe on some non-shooting small forward or whatever. You're going to have schemes that are going to have to hide him. Great. Okay. You can deal with one of those players. You can't deal with 2 of those players. You can't have 2 leaky parts, and it's always going to hurt you a little bit. But how many generational talents on offense are available right now in terms of like on the trade market that you can get for Pascal Siakam? Nobody. Damian Lillard is so much better offensively than Jalen Brown. So much better. And despite the reputation, he's not that far off defensively right now either. So, if Boston was smart, they would trade Jalen Brown for him in a second. I would if I were them. But they're not going to. And if they don't, then I think the Raptors have an opportunity here to sneak in and, build themselves a 3-year championship window. And it won't be right away, and they're going to have to take their bumps next year, and they'll probably be playoff bound right away with Damian Lillard, but maybe it'll be a lower seed. But I've mentioned yesterday, the East is weakening a lot, and I think that they can exploit that. And Damian Lillard plus Scottie Barnes plus Gary Trent plus OG Anunoby plus Jakob Poeltl puts you firmly into top 4 consideration. Firmly. Unless you are super sour on OG's evolution, Gary's evolution, and Scottie's evolution. If you think those guys are just as good as they're going to be and they're not going to get better, okay, fine. But I think getting a guy like Damian Lillard also puts a lot of pressure on those guys. So I think they can win with him. Portland says no. That may very well be the case. I don't know anyone at Portland. I don't know what they're looking for, but what I heard is that they're looking for a star, and they're looking for, they're looking to build around their core. And obviously they've already signed Jerami Grant, and that's not a deal that you can move to anybody right now. I promise you, there's no chance you moving that deal in the next 2 years. And, you have a starting point guard. You have a starting shooting guard. You have a starting small forward in Jerami Grant. You have a starting center, technically, who you should definitely move at some point. What are you really missing here? You're missing a starting power forward. And I think Pascal Siakam's about as good a fit next to Scoot Henderson as you can imagine. It's a very good fit. So I don't think that they should be so quick to say no. And if the competing offer is Jalen Brown and Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons is not a good fit. You're in the same situation. Siakam, being a bigger player who can eventually maybe evolve into a small ball 5, is a much better fit for them. I know he's not as big a name as Jalen Brown, but I wouldn't care about that if I was Portland. You already have the big name. You have Scoot Henderson. That's box office. People are going to come to see that. Are we playing? Yeah, that is the thought. Matthew Wilson says he's demanding a trade, guys. If other teams' offers are similar value, this is enough for him. Exactly. Teams are not just jumping over themselves to, trade for a 32-year-old Damian Lillard who's going to be paid $65 million in 2 years. Granted, you and I can probably agree that there are some contracts that have been handed out in free agency and some extensions that are extreme, and they seem extreme until you put into the broader context of where the cap is going. And I guarantee you, I don't guarantee you, but I'm quite certain that all of the cap estimates will go up. That whatever we're estimating the cap to be next year, I think it'll go up. I think that's kind of where this is going. And I think most of the estimates that are being looked at right now are conservative. I think there's going to be a lot of money coming into the league. And I think at some point, you're going to start looking at $40 million contracts the same way you look at $30 million contracts right now within the near term, probably in the next 3-4 years. So the Raptors are in a perfect position right now. They have Jakob Poeltl signed up to what's soon to be probably towards the end of his deal. He's going to be making the mid-level. Okay, that's excellent value. If you can get Gary Trent Jr. signed up for, let's say, $90 million for 4 years, 95, 98, 100, 100, it's rich. It's rich for my blood, but it's just rich for my blood. And there's still some upside on that contract. You get OG Anunoby for maybe 4 years, 132, if he agrees to that. You get Scotty Barnes on his rookie max extension, and then you get Damian Lillard. You'll probably be in the luxury tax maybe by like 1 year. And then Dame comes back. And, if he's still serviceable at 35, which he definitely could be, you just extend him. Extend him to one of those, 1 year plus 1 year type of deals. Do for him what you did for Lowry. He's a winner, man. He's a winner through and through. He hasn't won a championship. Fine. Win him one. Let's win one with him. Dame doesn't want to go to Toronto. I doubt that. I highly doubt that. I'm sure it's not the number one place on his list, but I'm sure, knowing what he values as a player, as a person, I can't imagine how he wouldn't value the stability that Toronto can give. If you're Portland, you don't even listen unless Barnes is included. Well, if you're Toronto, you're not including Barnes into this. I would worry about OG being included into this, but if OG is gone, then you have nothing. You're not winning. You can't win. You need so much defense around Damian Lillard. That is $8 million salary filler. Agreed. Damian Lillard is on a different level. Fully agreed. Does Dame have a no trade clause? No, he does not. No, he does not. But, Portland and he have a somewhat decent relationship. I wonder how much that relationship has soured now that he's demanded a trade, because in all honesty, like, this completely screwed over Portland. I mean, I'm pretty sure they rethink that Jerami Grant thing many times over if they knew that he was going to demand a trade. But I mean, according to sources, his deal to them was clear. I'll give you free agency to prove to me that you can build a contender around me. If not, I'm gone. So yeah, I hear you. Like, is he going to be excited to not play with another star? Well, if you can sell him on Scotty being his ascending second star, then I think it can work. And if he simply says, no, I don't believe it. But, here's the thing. I've never heard of a really great player who didn't think very highly of Scotty Barnes. I've never seen it in my life. Magic Johnson, Kyle Lowry, Vince Carter, Jason Tatum, John Morant, Kevin Durant, LeBron James. Like, the list goes on and on and on of players. Kevin Garnett, Charles Oakley. Like, there's so many players that you would assume really, really understand this game deeply, that study the game. They can see the greatness in him. I've never met a smart person in my life who didn't see greatness in this guy. The only people I've ever met that don't see greatness in his future are total casuals who don't understand basketball. It's just that's maybe me being a little bit adversarial and a little bit mean, and maybe it's okay to agree to disagree on certain things. But when I hear comments like, oh, wow, he's just gonna be a role player, he's gonna be Michael Carter Williams, like, I'm just like, wow, what are you watching? Like, I mean, this is not even debatable. This is not objectively, we can argue that he will never be an MVP candidate. We can argue he's never going to be a top 5 player, top 10 player, whatever. But I mean, for a 21-year-old, my God, he is a very good player, like a very good player. And there's no reason to believe that with his mental makeup, psychological profile, hard work, physical tools, athletic tools, his game, his love for the game, everything that he does, that he won't become at least 3, 4, 5-time All-Star. That's a very good second piece. And you don't need your second piece to be an MVP candidate, I think Dame would just like to be competitive. He hasn't been to the playoffs in a couple of years, right? The Blazers have been in the lottery. They will not be in the lottery next year. You sell him on the upside. Hey, Dame, you have missed the playoffs for 2 years. Give Scotty a year to grow into this. And by year 2, you'll be 33 and he'll be on the verge of being an all-star. And y'all can, and we'll put a competitive roster around you and we'll commit to going into the luxury tax because you're a superstar and we know that you can bring us there. And if Scotty ever hits, like if he pops, like if he becomes Luka, if he becomes that level, if he becomes, that Jason Tatum level, if he becomes that, he becomes what I hope he's going to become, what Brian hopes he's going to become, what people around him hopes he can become, what Masai and Bobby probably think that he can become when they held him off Kevin Durant trade talks. Well, now you have the perfect system, because I'll leave you with this final thought. Last year, Brian went on Yahoo Sports, Brian Macon, his trainer, and he talked about using Scotty like the Denver Nuggets use Nikola Jokic. And the comparison was pretty seamless. There's a lot of comparisons. Obviously, Nikola Jokic, a bigger player and a better player at the same age. I'll be completely honest about that. He was better, for sure. He was more impactful. He was better. He was more efficient. He was also a better shooter. So there's a lot of things going in Nikola Jokic's favor. But also Nikola Jokic played with a coach who really believed in him, nurtured him, played on a roster that was really, really hell-bent on developing him. I don't think Scotty's had that rep. I don't think Scotty's had that chance. And he was also very healthy. And I don't think Scotty was healthy last year. So I don't think the numbers need to reflect anything. I think the rookie to rookie stats are pretty comparable. So I think that if Scotty can become 80% of what Nikola Jokic is, then Damian Lillard, yes, even Damian Lillard at the age of 34 is such a perfect fit with that. Because Damian Lillard is like a more gifted, slightly smaller Jamal Murray. Like a way better passer, a way better shooter, a way better scorer, a way better ball handler. He does all the same shit that Jamal Murray does. He's just a little bit smaller and just way better. Like all the hype about Jamal Murray right now, and I appreciate it, Canadian boy and stuff. Don't even put Jamal Murray and Damian Lillard into the same sentence. They're not close. Okay. So I don't mean to be hyping up Dame. I just think he's one of the top 10 players in the NBA. I don't think his value is super high right now. I don't think there are a lot of teams that can really field competitive offers for him and keep him happy. That's the thing. Are you a contender? Great. Can you actually trade for Damian Lillard without gutting your entire roster? Probably not. What is Phoenix going to do? They're gonna trade Devin Booker for him? I don't think they can. I don't think they would. Right? What's Miami going to do? Tyler Hero. That's the competing offer here. Tyler Hero plus stuff. They're not including Bam. They're not including Jimmy. You're telling me that Pascal Siakam's not better than Tyler Hero? You must be crazy. And look at Portland's side. Tyler Hero next to Anthony Simons, Shaedon Sharpe, and Scoot Henderson. How the fuck does that make any sense? No. And if he wants to go to Miami, there's no chance. There's nothing. They give him Bam Adebayo. I think Bam and Pascal are close. But they're not giving up Bam. They believe in Bam. Well, the only downside, in my opinion, of this, like the big downside here, is that Siakam's expiring. And they would have to really worry that he may not want to be there long term. But I think Portland fits Pascal Siakam. And I think Toronto suits Dame Lillard. I think this is a perfect thing. Okay. There are now 151 more comments. No way Dame's going to the Raptors. Disagree. But let's see. I hope he does. I hope that would be amazing. Because you know what? If I give you my list of favorite players in the NBA, Scotty's on it, OG's on it, Dame is on it. All three guys are on it. Jokic is on it. Jason Tatum, DeJounte Murray. Yeah, there's a real chance. Fred's cousin messaged me today and asked me why I hate Fred so much. It's so weird. I don't hate Fred VanVleet, man. I don't hate Fred VanVleet. I'm just really happy he's gone. Portland needs small forward and center. Cronin wants OG Anunoby and first picks. Maybe Siakam or Achua. But Portland demands OG. I can see why they would demand OG. I just don't know how we can make the salaries work without giving them Pascal Siakam. Right? I'm not sure, like, do we have the salaries to even do it? So if we were to do OG Anunoby, Thaddeus Young, Chris Boucher. Wow. Okay. Otto, like Malik, like we're giving him 5 players. Like Dame makes a shit ton of money, dude. Like it's a lot of money. So it's really difficult to match with a player who's making like $18 million next year. Like OG Anunoby does not make a lot of money, man. Like OG's at what? 18.6. Damian Lillard next year is at 45. So 45 million, 18, you have to make up nearly $30 million. Like that's a lot. Like $27 million difference there. That's a lot of money. Like it's going to be hard to do by just, Malachi, Thaddeus Young. I mean, okay, Malachi's $4 million. Thaddeus Young's $8 million. Chris Boucher is $11 million. It just barely gets you there. And then at that point, I'm just like, I want OG there, man. Like I need OG. If I got Damian Lillard, I need OG. Would I do this without OG? Holy shit. Scotty slots in at the 3. Pascal stays at the 4. I love OG, but I would do it. I might do it. I'd be cautious about it, but it's fucking Dame Lillard, bro. It's very difficult. But knowing what that would do to Scotty, I think that's my issue there, because now Scotty's third option again, and now the first option is a real first option. Like, that to me is tough, right? It's really tough. So I'd be more inclined to move Pascal because he's less likely to be able to do things away from scoring. And I just think that if you have an all NBA guy in Dame Lillard, like a legit first team all NBA guy, you have a fringy third all NBA guy, third team all NBA guy in Siakam, and you got Pascal and Scotty. I mean, you have a real window here to do something, but I just worry about your defense without OG Anunoby, man. A lot of this does not work without OG and Jakob. I mean, I can say what I want about Scotty's defense and Pascal's defense. It's not like great. OG's defense is great. Okay. Like, it's great. So it's a different level of defender. You need to be good enough. Like I think great defenders can cover for non-great defenders. That's the problem with Portland. They've always put decent defenders around Dame. Decent defenders can barely cover their own space, much less cover space for others. You need like godly defenders to cover for a guy like Dame. You need a Rudy Gobert. You need a guy like that. Rudy Gobert in his prime, Draymond Green. You need guys like that. Next step down, OG Anunoby. That's the level of defender you need with Dame. So for me, it's non-starter. Now, Scotty Barnes, that's like non-starter for me too. I cannot imagine trading a 21-year-old for a 32-year-old in his prime. But I'll tell you right now, if I was a little bit more objective and I wasn't the biggest Scotty fan on earth, yeah, I'd definitely consider it. Damian Lillard is not it's not something that grows on trees. But again, Scotty just doesn't make enough to make that deal worth it. He makes $8 million next year. You would have to fill in almost $40 million with other players. It's tough. You'd have to gut your whole roster. You have to trade Gary Trent and OG Anunoby in that deal. You're in the same situation as you were with Kevin Durant last year, where it's like, you're like, oh, well, KD for Scotty, how'd they say no? Well, they didn't just say no to that. There was OG and Gary probably included in that deal too. That's why they say no. I mean, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have said no if it was just Scotty for KD, but I'm just saying the deal is not even realistic. It's not possible. So it's not worth discussing. Anyway, y'all, enjoy the rest of free agency. It looks like, yeah, that's hilarious, actually. What do you think of Dylan Burks going to the Rockets to play with Fred? Yeah, I've already addressed this. I think it's hilarious, actually. But hey, man, let's be honest. If the Rockets are competitive next year, I think Fred VanVleet is going to get a lot of credit for it, and I think that's sort of funny. Agreed. Sorry, I'm just is this in response to this is why you can get rid of OG? Neither of those defenders are anywhere near as good as OG, in my opinion. Scotty is like a good defender. He had really difficult matchups last year. His matchup difficulty was insane. He's extremely this is rushing it. Okay. Also, I just want to give a quick shout out. I did something very interesting today. So around 2:00, y'all know that I've been promising that neuroscience video on basketball, and I had my friend Catherine come on, and we had about the most illuminating discussion on neuroscience and basketball that you can imagine. It's incredible. It's 2 hours long. I got to edit it down to I want to say about 35 to 40 minutes because I actually want people to see it. It's incredible. She is really smart. Look out for that video next week. We talked about neuropriming. We talked about what's happening in an athlete's game, why people don't succeed in the NBA, temptation, social media, how to prime your brain for competition, why some guys choke, why some guys are good in the playoffs, learning basketball at a young age, playing two sports. We talked about so much, yo. It's incredible. Can we watch the whole thing? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start a Patreon at some point. Y'all see that this channel is growing really fast. At some point, I will start a Patreon because I don't let the secret out of the hat. There's going to be a lot of interviews coming up on this channel. Long form interviews is what I want to do. And I want to do it with Raptor players. And I want to do it with, people and like people that you would know, right? Ex-players. I've reached out to a few ex-players, gotten some good feedback back. So, your boy is taking this channel to a different level and a different game right now. I want to do some things. Fred VanVleet, I gotta be honest, honestly, my biggest barrier to access to the Raptors was by completely contentious relationship or non-relationship with Fred VanVleet. I just can't imagine teammates of his, people like Gary Sr. I can't even imagine them coming on knowing everything that I've said about Fred VanVleet. How would they come on? Brian took so much shit for coming on online. He was vilified for coming on this channel. So I understand this channel has a bit of a rep, but it was mainly to do with Fred VanVleet, a little bit to do with Pascal Siakam. Shit, if they both move on, fuck, I'm free. But I don't have anything against Pascal Siakam. As I told Fred's cousin, I don't have anything against Fred either. I honestly, it's nothing personal. I want this team to play a certain way. Yes, I did. Interview Fred VanVleet for giggles. I'm down. Do it. Set it up, man. Someone set this up. Fred, I've already asked for it, but I don't think I can afford him. I would do it. I would be happy to have a civilized discussion. I actually think we have a lot in common that, it's key differences, but I do think I appreciate where he's coming from in a lot of stuff, the hard work, the hustle, taking care of your family, all that stuff. I just think there's this peculiar way to go about it. And I just think greatness is supposed to elevate other people. I don't think it's supposed to elevate you. So there's a very key and critical difference, but I do admire him. I do respect him. And, people don't always get that from what I'm when I say he's a cancer and I want him off my team, people they wash out the rest of it, which is the admiration for how hard it was to do what he's done and the respect that I have for someone who can do that. So yeah. Anyway, so the conversation with Catherine is going to come out next week. I'm going to try to cut it down. What I was saying earlier was eventually I want to start a Patreon where I'll release full form content. So maybe if I have a 1 hour discussion with a player and I cut it down to 35 minutes, I'll release the full form on Patreon. I think it'd be great. I think this channel is finally getting to a point where it's actually a living wage, monthly. It's starting to pay quite a bit, getting a lot of sponsorship offers. So I'm very happy. But you know what? I tell you right now, I've been holding back a lot. There's a lot left to be done. I haven't touched the surface yet. I'm a good editor. I'm a good writer. I can do a lot of scripted content. And some of y'all have been missing those 8, 9, 12, 15 minute, series videos and stuff. We went very heavy into lives and therapy sessions and low light films last year. Expect some of the deeper dives to be back. Expect analytics breakdowns. Let me get back to it. Yeah. Will Lou interview? Yeah. That'd be funny. Yeah. Anyways, guys, take care. Have a good one. And make sure to hit sub up. Next stop is 7,000. And let's, hit that. I polled our Instagram audience on where this channel would be on opening night. And 12% of them said under 6,000 subs. And 15% said over 10,000. So let's prove 15% right by opening night. I'm really looking forward to Summer League. I'm looking forward to trade season. I don't think you pick up Thad's option. I don't think you pick up Thad's contract in the sense. I don't think you let that contract become guaranteed unless there's a plan to make it for a trade. So yeah, I think there's a trade. I think it's got to come. Rob, reach out to Samson. He'll respond. I've already reached out to Samson. I think I emailed him 2 days ago and he's not interested. So say la vie. Yeah. It's funny. I think a lot of Toronto media people were really, really actively rooting for Fred to come back. And I look forward to seeing how they're going to pivot as stuff starts to come out about him. Yeah. Anyways, take care, guys. Have a good one. Peace. And hit the subscribe, please. And hit like. See ya. Oh, and finally, thank you again to Goat. I really appreciate that, man. I'm going to leave this chat. That's such a crazy thing. It's not the first time he's dropped a hugely generous super chat. So again, if you have not checked out Goateology, obviously this is an old graphic. He has like a thousands of more subscribers now. Check that out at Goateology. Please go check it out. It's a really good channel, really awesome content, really polished, super well researched. There's a great one on Scoot Henderson. I think that might be one of my favorites on that channel. So definitely go check it out. All right, guys. Talk to you later. Peace. Oh, shoot. There's another one. My bad. I missed this super chat. My bad, guys. Lucas, OG and Siakam for Lillard and Nasir Little. I say no because I really like OG, and I can't lose OG and Siakam. But I see why that trade might be popular and that might seem like fair value. I just think that that's a really tough sell for me. Like, but in terms of basketball value, that's fair. In terms of like impact, that might be fair. But I think you have to look at it from OG's 25, Siakam's 28, 29, Lillard's 32. You know what I mean? And I don't understand how having Damian Lillard on a non-contender puts you in any different situation than he's in Portland. You have to build a competitive roster around him. And I don't see how you can do that without OG. Anyways, thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one. Peace.